Thank you very much, Audrey. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Have a nice weekend.
Before we go to the introduction of our esteemed speaker, Thilo von Debschitz, I would like to pass the word to President Gerard for some welcoming remarks. You're mute, Gerard.
I don't know why we never learned this. It's something we, how many Zooms do we have to do before we realize that we're muted and we have to unmute ourselves? Nonetheless, thank you everyone for being with us today and welcome to our meeting of the Rotary Club of New York this afternoon. And I'm intrigued with this one. I have to thank Andreas for setting this one up for us today. Thilo von Debschitz, welcome to our club. I understand you are a member of the Rotary Club of Wiesbaden, Kochbrunnen, correct? Fantastic, excellent. And the topic, I have to say, is fascinating. So the topic is Dr. FRITZ KAHN, and I must tell you, I must confess, I don't know very much about Dr. FRITZ KAHN at all. So everything that you will be enlightening us on today will be welcomed. And,
perfect.
So welcome, it's yours.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much for having me. Yes, let me just share my screen with you. And Andreas, just give me a thumb up if so. Okay, perfect. So hello, New York. Yeah, as you just said, my name is Thilo von Debschitz. I'm 55 years old, member of the Rotary Club in Wiesbaden-Kochbrunnen. I'm head of a design studio over here, and yeah, thanks so much for having me. I decided that my talk should at least give you the answer to 3 very important questions. How fast does your hair grow? How long can you live without food? And how does the erection work? I stumbled upon the images of Fritz KAHN by coincidence some years ago, and I was blown away. The visuals I found were really fascinating. But I also discovered that Kahn's oeuvre was mostly forgotten because of Nazi censorship. There was no Wikipedia entry, no information about Fritz KAHN as a person, no summary of his works. So for all being not familiar with him, I'm happy to change that. For a better understanding of Fritz KAHN's work, I would like to take you on a short trip into history, 100 years into the past, to the era of the Weimar Republic in the city of Berlin. Back then, Berlin, with its 4 million inhabitants, was the biggest city in Europe and the 3rd biggest city in the world. But Berlin was somehow chaotic, a place of glittering wealth and dark poverty. Beggars and veterans of the First World War crowded the streets, while at the same time, the art and culture scene flourished. Modern production methods standardized and rationalized the working environment. Here we see workers in a factory for vacuum cleaners in Berlin. Other industries were affected as well. Around 100 years ago, the car company Opel introduced assembly line work in Germany. In 1923, Berlin Tempelhof Airport was opened. By the way, after only 4 years of construction, which at least in Germany is almost unthinkable today. And the electric railway was invented during the Weimar Republic. In general, electrification expanded dramatically during the 1920s. This is the control room of a Berlin power plant at that time. Just to give you an idea, from 1925 to 1930, the number of households in Berlin with electricity tripled from 25 to 75%. In the 1920s, a nationwide telephone network was established. Here you see a room with female switchboard operators. The most important source of information was newspapers. Never again will there be more daily and weekly newspapers in Germany than at the end of the Weimar Republic. In 1931, there were 4,000 daily and weekly newspapers. Today, we have no more than 350 in Germany. Thanks to technical printing innovations, the newsstands also offered many magazines full of fascinating images. But not only printed material fulfilled the need for entertainment and information, new media also entered everyday experience. For example, the cinema became very popular. Big movie theaters sprouted like mushrooms. In 1924, radio broadcasting began in Germany. Today, radio is mostly perceived as a minor medium and we don't pay much attention to it. But in the 20s, it was truly a revolution. People dressed up and came together to listen to the radio. Because of this media variety, people had more access to information than ever before. Social and individual behavior were radically changed. And in the midst of this exciting time, in the middle of Berlin, lived and worked FRITZ KAHN. Here we see him aged 40 with his 4-year-old son Emanuel in 1928. I'll come back to Emanuel at the end of my talk. FRITZ KAHN was born on September 29th of 1888. He studied medicine in Berlin and then opened a gynecological practice. In addition to his work as a doctor, he wrote more than 20 books explaining the complexity of natural sciences and the human body in everyday, non-scientific language. Most of his books became real bestsellers and translated into many languages. His main opus was a book series entitled Das Leben des Menschen, Life of Man, published between 1922 and 1931. What makes these popular science publications special is their large number of images, which was not known before. These 5 books contain 1,200 visuals. This is a page from a folder promoting the book series and emphasizing the volume of images. FRITZ KAHN was a genius in creating concepts for illustrations that combined both entertainment and information. He did not produce the visuals himself, since he had no drawing skills. KAHN collaborated with graphic designers, illustrators, and sometimes with architects who brought his ideas to life. And from the giant treasure of visualization methods in FRITZ KAHN's books, I'll present a small selection today. At first, KAHN was a master of analogy. He implemented the technological progress of his time in his imagery and depicted physiological processes by comparing nature and technology, man and machine. This image is entitled Biology of a Roast Smell. It describes the smelling process from the olfactory sensation to salivation as if it's happening in an industrial lab. In the upper right, switching connections are depicted just as we saw before in the photo of phone operators. Assembly line work is the analogy in this illustration, which explains the act of mastication. In the upper part, the functions of the different teeth are compared with tools. In the lower part, workers are sitting at an assembly line demonstrating the shapes and functions of the tongue's taste buds. I mentioned the new movie theaters at that time. This visual describes what goes on in our heads when we see a car and say the word for car. After a projection into the inner eye, a mental movie projector runs a reel. A projectionist identifies the car as a car and sends his conclusion to a colleague who presses a keyboard to form the word auto in the voice organ. In this illustration, KAHN indicates that a car is shaped like the human ear. He presents similarities in the hidden structures of 2 totally different objects. While the enthusiasm for cars was rising at that time, KAHN picked up that vibe to explain human organs comprehensible not only for technophiles. This is the famous visual Der Mensch als Industriepalast, Man as Industrial Palace from 1926. This life-size poster was included in the 3rd volume of the book series Das Leben des Menschen and also used as a wall chart for school teaching. It's indeed the only KAHN image that's still preserved in the collective consciousness although its originator went mostly forgotten. The illustration presents the human body as a modern industrial company. In the upper stories, we see office workers wearing suits and white lab coats. Here, the people think, read, and discuss. The nervous system is compared with a switchboard, and the nerves themselves are depicted as electric wires and cable connections. In the lower area, there's a big industrial plant with tanks, tubes, measuring instruments, and conveyor belts. Workers wear factory uniforms and are physically engaged, for example, in the liver, which is shown as a chemical factory. Most people would be uncomfortable with a realistic insight into the human body, but when it's visualized like this, the inner body is attractive and exciting for both young and old. With analogies like this, KAHN was also able to deal with taboos in a smart way, for example, with sexuality. This image is entitled Technical Schematic Representation of the Male Erection System. In the lower left, we see the male sex organs keeping the brain in electric suspense. This makes the brain receptive to an erotic impulse, in this case, an undressed lady. As a metaphor for sexual excitement, a ball is set in motion and has to overcome moral resistance before it descends and sets off a series of signals from the spinal cord to the spongy veins of the penis. But Fritz Kahn's ideas reached far beyond comparisons of the human body with technical devices. Here we see a juxtaposition of the shell of a walnut and a human skull. The outer rind on both is so stable that it safely protects its interior. In this image, KAHN explains the meaning of clothing with a thermos flask analogy. At the left, we see a man with several clothing layers. On the right, the layers of a thermos flask. Each textile layer corresponds with a layer of the flask. In KAHN's books, we also find classic information graphics as we know them from nowadays. Some of them don't need further comments. This, for example, shows the food's journey through the bends of the intestines. The little clock indicates the speed of the food. This is a comparison of tea consumption measured in grams per person from the year 1926. Not very surprising, British people drink the most tea. But German tea consumption has increased continuously since 1840. The teapots are getting bigger since then. And this is the consumption of coffee measured in kilograms per person. Here are the Dutch and the Belgians in the lead. This visual tells us how long creatures can survive without food. Each of the 8 parts of the illustration includes 4 tier-off calendars, symbolizing the time factor. Over 4 years, the calendar pages pile up to a big paper mountain. And we learn a bird dies of hunger after 9 days. Humans can continue without food for up to 3 more days. And some insects can live without food for more than 3 years. Now let's do a little quiz. What do you think? How long does your hair grow per day? What do you think? How long does your hair grow per day? Just open the mic and shout. What do you think? The daily hair grow?
1/8 of an inch.
1/8 of an inch, okay. Paul, any guess?
1 millimeter a day.
Okay. So let's solve the quiz. If you combine all of your hair into one single hair, your daily hair growth would reach a length of 98 feet per day. 98 feet. Every 40 minutes, that hair would grow by 3.3 feet. This is an example for another visualization strategy you often encounter in the publications of Fritz Kahn based on absurdities. With exaggerated depictions, Kahn astonished his readers about the incredible human body's performance. The connecting tissue and ligaments in the pelvis are so strong that you could go on a balloon ride suspended from them. As the strongest of all the large bones, the human shin bone is so strong that it can support a 3,637-pound load. That equals the weight of 21 men. And here is a depiction of a technical and biological miracle. The small human abdominal cavity houses not only the stomach, liver, kidneys, pancreas, and urinary bladder, but also 27 feet of intestines. 27 feet. Each human body contains an average of 25 billion blood cells joined together to form a chain. They would encircle the world 4 times over. Or let us take a look at the heart's amazing performance. The heart is so strong that it can move an elevator up 5 floors in 40 minutes. The heart could fill 3 tanker trucks with 10,000 liters of blood in the course of 1 day. And it pumps 250 million liters of blood in 70 years, enough to fill that skyscraper. This illustration presents the average human being's food consumption in 70 years as calculated by FRITZ KAHN. For example, 4,000 kilograms of meat, 6,000 loaves of bread, or 12,000 liters of coffee you consuming in 70 years. Of course, FRITZ KAHN did not work in isolation or outside the political circumstances of his time. FRITZ KAHN was Jewish. In the 1930s, he was forced to close his medical practice. And after the Weimar Republic failed, he was one of many authors whose books were banned and burned. He decided to leave Germany and began a long odyssey to Palestine, England, France, Spain, and Portugal. Eventually, in 1941, when all of his options were nearly exhausted, Albert Einstein, Kahn's friend from his time in Berlin, helped him get a US visa and escape from Lisbon. In the States, he continued publishing books and articles, but he never again achieved the creative brilliance of his earlier publications. Actually, during his years in New York, he lived on the corner of Broadway and 97th Street in the Bloomingdale district. FRITZ KAHN never returned to Germany. He died in Switzerland in 1968. Here is a final visual example of Kahn's work from 1939. This image is entitled "The Doctor of the Future." We see a doctor in an urban loft-like environment at a modern desk. He's not in physical contact with his patient. Instead, he's looking at a big media wall. By pressing buttons, the doctor connects with his patient and makes a remote diagnosis via screen, radiography, and measurement devices. Through speakers, even the patient's heartbeat is transmitted. The patient is on the other side of the globe, lying sick in the cruise ship India, somewhere on the ocean. That's not much different from a Zoom chat. You see, FRITZ KAHN predicted telemedicine 50 years before it became routine. So this is how Kahn conceived the times in which you and I are living today. And with this visionary image, we return from our time travel back to the present. Along our way back into present, we find numerous interpretations of Kahn's most popular image, the Industriepalast. These are 2 book covers from Great Britain. On the left, it's a title created by pop artist Edoardo Paolozzi from the year 1972. On the right, a Guardian cover illustration by Sam Falconer from 2015. In 2006, designer Carlo Giovoni and art director Renata Steffen created the illustration on the left to demonstrate how food gets transformed into human waste, or as they say in Brazil, into coco. Little funny workers operate the transformation process. Like the erection illustration by Kahn I showed before, this man-machine visualization might be the only way to handle subjects which are usually a big taboo. The piece on the right is entitled The Human Factory and was created by designers Sandro Falzetti and Mario Cano for a publishing house in Sao Paulo in 2007. It gets very close to the original. There are only just a few adjustments. For example, there is a satellite dish in the audio center, or a computer on a desk at the intellectual center, and some of the workers in the lower body part have been replaced by machines. I don't know if you can see it, but in the industrial area, there are only 3 guys left. There's also, Andreas, could you give me a thumbs up when you hear the sound? Okay, thank you. There's also a number of creatives in Europe being inspired by FRITZ KAHN. Left, an illustration by Philipp Schieferdecker for the Süddeutsche Zeitung newspaper. And in 2009, German designer Henning Lederer created his final year project at an English university. He decided to produce an interactive installation. You see the original Industriepalast of FRITZ KAHN as a moving image. 5 different circulations within the body can be operated separately. Here you see them working all together. Here are 2 more interpretations from recent years, which we found during our research. Left, an adaptation of Homer Simpson in the FRITZ KAHN style by Matt Groening. Right, an illustration taken from the Dutch book Het Wonder van You by Jan Paul Schrutten and illustrator Flor Ritter, published in 2015. More things we found. At first, the originals by Fritz KAHN. On the top left, there's a visual about the adaptation of the eye depending on the lightness in day and night time. The illustration on the upper right was used to demonstrate the impact of sunlight on the skin. In the second row, there are similar images from two different book editions of Das Leben des Menschen, comparing a muscle-nerve connection from the fingertip to the motoric center in the brain with a wave from the bell button to the doorbell. And we were so happy when we saw that people decided to wear these pictures as tattoos, and that Fritz KAHN has recaptured mass appeal in the here and now. The green book on the left was our first KAHN monograph, published in 2009. It is sold out, just like the book we published at Taschen in 2013. In 2017, we published a new edition. It's a heavy brickstone-like book with more than 500 pages, more than 350 images, and available in 6 languages. It's sold out right now. So if you are interested in more background information and inspiring visuals, you may take a look into our publication. I hope I was able to raise some interest in the work of Fritz KAHN. So this is, again, a look into the book. And to be honest, I never planned to publish a book like this. It all started with a coincidence. And together with my sister Uta, I searched through international archives to make KAHN's fabulous work visible again. There has been an unbelievable pressure of work and input of energy and money beside keeping a family and running a design studio. But on the other hand, it was also a lot of fun to discover the inspiring work of Fritz KAHN. And it was even more fun to experience wonderful encounters like tonight. For me tonight, you have lunchtime, opportunities like being here today with you, making new friends and enjoying emotional moments in context with this project. So now at the end of my presentation, I would like to share one of these special moments with you. You remember the little 4-year-old boy on the photograph at the beginning of my presentation, Emanuel, the son of Fritz KAHN. He and his wife Shoshana became good friends during our search for traces of Fritz KAHN. Emanuel himself could not tell us a lot about his father. He spent years of his youth as a foster kid in Great Britain to be protected from the Nazi regime. And he was never able to establish a close relationship to his father, Fritz. So he was very excited about what we would pull up. In 2009, at the same week when the copies of our first green book arrived from the bookbinder, Emanuel KAHN, this little boy, was about to celebrate his 85th birthday, which is 81 years after this photo was taken. So we decided to surprise him in Brooklyn on his birthday. I took a plane from Frankfurt to New York. My sister Uta stayed in Berlin, and our plan was that Uta would call the KAHNs at 3 o'clock and I ring their doorbell at exactly the same time. This is how we wanted to hand the first book about Fritz KAHN as a gift to his son. That moment was worth all our efforts of traveling, researching, writing, scanning, retouching, proofreading, spending money, etc. I videotaped this moment so that my sister could watch it later. Apologize for the poor frame rate due to Zoom. So please imagine me standing at the front door of the KAHN house in Brooklyn. My heart is beating fast. I rang the bell and Shoshana, Emanuel's wife, is about to open the door in a few seconds.
Ein ganz schrecklicher Mensch. Ein Bruder von dir.
Ein ganz großer, dunkler Mensch.
Thilo! Uta, das geht es doch gar nicht. Na geh weg, du bist ein Gespenst. Was? Bist du auch hier? Um die Ecke?
Nein, ich bin in Berlin, ganz ehrlich. Aber wir haben gedacht, wir können das zusammen überreichen auf diese Weise.
Oh mein Gott, ich glaube es gar nicht. Lass mich mal anfassen. Mano, guck, wer da gekommen ist. Du glaubst es nicht. Ein Gespenst aus Deutschland. Guck dir das an, Mano, du glaubst das nicht.
Happy Birthday.
Guck dir das an, ein Gespenst aus Deutschland. Guck dir das an. Was?
Du sprichst mit der Uta noch am Telefon?
Ja.
Uta ist nicht da, ich bin da.
Ich bin des Geburtstags.
Also nochmal herzlichen Glückwunsch und hier ist unser...
How do you like that? Manuchen, guck, wer da gekommen ist.
Alles Gute zum Geburtstag. Happy Birthday.
Oh, danke schön. Danke.
Ein Buch. Oh mein goodness, gracious, nein, sowas gibt es nur einmal. Das ist nicht zu glauben. Thilochen, das ist nicht zu glauben. Da
Thilo,
kommt die ganze Wiesbaden. Was ist denn das? Ist das das Buch schon?
Ja, es ist fertig.
Oh my goodness.
Seit einer Woche ist es fertig.
Oh my goodness.
Congratulations.
Und das sind die ersten Exemplare.
Congratulations.
Das sind die ersten Exemplare aus der Buchbinderei. Und ich habe mir für euch eins geben lassen, damit ich es hierher bringen kann.
Nein.
So gerührt, dass du auf einmal hier unerwartet ankommst. Wirklich, ich glaub's noch nicht. Es ist wirklich ein herrliches Geschenk. Vielen Dank.
Thank you so much for listening and for your attention. I hope, Gerard, I was able to introduce Fritz KAHN to you. Thank you very much.
Ja, vielen Dank. So, we can have, if you don't mind, we have questions and answers now.
Sure.
I have a few. The first is any possibility that Fritz KAHN is related to the Otto KAHN family here, the great, the German financier in New York?
I don't think so. Actually, KAHN, like Cohen of one of your members, is a very common Jewish name. I think it's a priest called a priest in Hebrew.
Mhm.
So I don't think there's any relation.
Okay, and your design Q, is this what Studio Q you call this?
Yeah, actually, we were founded before the QAnon movement was around. So if I would be in the US, I might think about a name change. But my last name is very difficult, von Debschitz. When I worked in New York at a design company, they were always making fun of my name, telling that my name is Deep Shit. So I had to live with this. And so when we founded our company, my co-founder also had a complicated name. We thought, how can we name our company? And we did some brainstorming, and we came to the conclusion that in the James Bond movie, there's a creative guy who does all the inventions for James Bond to make James Bond successful. And the name is Q. So we thought, this is just brilliant. We just have this letter, Q, and we name the company after that guy. So this is why we are called Q. We are not connected with the QAnon movement at all, please.
That's fascinating. There was a New Yorker, well, he's still a New Yorker, who started a company back in the 1960s, early 70s, and his name was Ralph Lipschitz. And he said, it would be difficult to market garments in New York that had Lipschitz on the front of the, so he changed his name from Lipschitz to Lauren, L-A-U-R-E-N, and that's Ralph Lauren.
Yeah.
His real name is Lipschitz. So
I know, and Ralph Lauren owns my book because he sent me a letter one time. He owns my
fantastic. Book. Fantastic. Any of our viewers have any questions? Please, now is the time. I found it fascinating, Thilo, when you did the introduction showing the stills from Berlin in after the war. I don't know how many people are aware of the fact in let's say 1855, the largest German-speaking city in the world was Vienna. The second largest was Berlin. The third largest was New York City. Oh. And in 1910, there were over 100 German newspapers published in Manhattan alone. And 1 out of every 4 New Yorkers in 1910 was a native German speaker.
Wow, I didn't know that. I just in the early 1990s, when I was an intern in your city of New York, there was still the New Yorker Staatszeitung around.
Yes.
The German-speaking, because I was living in the Yorkville area, which was called Sauerkraut Boulevard in the early years, with Heidelberg restaurant, and I was told that in in the early times of the 20th century, people were speaking more German than English on these streets.
Absolutely.
Which of course changed after the Second World War.
Yes.
But I found this very interesting, and you could also see some signs, German-speaking signs on the houses. That was very interesting for me.
Yeah. So as a matter of fact, we used to go when my children were young. My wife and I, we used to go to a restaurant, and later on, I found the back room of the restaurant was where the Bund had its meetings during the war, and the FBI knew about it and used it to spy on spies. But yeah, fascinating presentation. Thank you so much for enlightening us.
Thank you so much for listening.
There's a whole area in Manhattan called Germantown.
Yeah, I think this is around 89th Street, 86th Street, somewhere.
A little below us.
Yeah.
On
Gerard,
the east side.
Yeah. Are you a historian because you know all these facts about?
Yes, amongst other things, I have been a professor of history. Yes.
Wow,
yes.
Wonderful.
But that's not how I make my living. I'm an attorney and a judge.
Okay.
But in a former life, yeah. And most people don't know this, but there are, of all the ethnic groups in the United States, there are more Americans of German ancestry than any other ethnicity. And that comes as a surprise even to most German Americans, because as you mentioned, especially after World War II, German ancestry was played down, and was not something.
Understandable.
So what got you interested in this subject, if I may ask?
Coincidence. As I told you, in the early 90s, I came over to your city as an intern from Germany, and my parents studied theology, and my mom spent 1 year in the kibbutz in Ulpan learning Hebrew, and this is where she got to know some German-speaking Jewish people, old Jewish people who survived the Holocaust, and one of this woman somehow adopted my mom, and when they heard that Thilo is going to New York, they gave me an address of a Jewish couple in Brooklyn, telling me that whenever I feel lonesome, I should get in contact with the KAHNs. And I never felt lonesome in your city, but of course I got in contact with them, and it appeared to me, so for me this was history lesson life, but I never met a Holocaust survivor before, and Shoshana opened her heart, and she told me her whole surviving story, which she never told actually her son. She always protected her son from these stories. And she told me how she escaped from a death march, how she worked for the Nazis under a false name just to survive. This was just unbelievable. And Emanuel, as you could see on the video, he was more the quiet guy. He didn't speak that much. And he just told me that his father was a doctor, and he also was an author. So I was looking up, and I couldn't find any more information except one book. So I bought this book online, and I showed it to my sister and said, this is just brilliant stuff for me as a designer, but also if you look from the cultural point of view, and how to explain complex things. Actually, this is what I do in my life, managing complexity by design, by information graphics. So we thought maybe there's more. So we were somehow digging, and we thought we found a treasure. So I with my sister, together with my sister, we decided we want to make this visible again, and to just get it back from the Nazi censorship and make it accessible again. So this is how we decided to do this book. Actually, I never did a book like this before. I have to admit, this is not my job, but we just found out that this is so incredible stuff. And it's also related to our time now, because I was trying to describe how times were changing back then in the Weimar Republic, electricity, industrial revolution. And we're living in a revolutionary area right now as well, the digital revolution, where information is accessible just by Googling it, by a fingertip. So we need people helping us to manage the complexity of information. So there's a relation between the past and the present, I think.
And this book is available in the United States now?
I was told that it's sold out. So this is not a sale talk today. It's just an introduction to the work of Fritz Kahn. But I was promised by the Taschen Publishing House, which is actually a very good and very large house, that they, in the second half of this year, they will publish books. And I might tell Andreas as soon as the book is out to maybe to shoot a mail and
this would be great. Okay, Andreas, keep us informed. Anyone else? Any other questions? So I found it fascinating also, Thilo, about you showed us the slide of a doctor communicating with the patient. And of course, we're all doing this. We're all doing the exact same thing. You know, thanks to COVID, I guess COVID one day will be seen as initiating a whole new change in the way we do things. But remote consultations with doctors is so commonplace today that I don't think we give much thought to it. And it's fascinating that he was able to envision this going back so many years.
True. Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm. Since I think probably when he designed that, when that slide was shown, I would venture to say most people, at least in Europe and the United States, probably didn't even have a telephone.
Right. Actually, that was the time when X-ray just started. So, and he was thinking about how to transfer the X-ray signals to like 2,000 kilometers away, like a medical practice. And so this is common today. And you're absolutely right. He was really envisioning this, and yeah.
And how now you mentioned his acquaintance with Albert Einstein.
Yeah.
Did you do any more research to how this came about and whether they followed how they followed up after he moved to the United States?
He was part of an intellectual Jewish community in Berlin, and Emanuel, the son, whom you just saw in the video, he remembers that he was sitting on the lap of Uncle Albert in Berlin. So they had a close relationship, and Fritz Kahn was also involved in some like Jewish community things. And Albert Einstein was already teaching at Princeton when he heard that Fritz Kahn is somehow stuck in Spain/Portugal. So he wrote to the embassy that a friend of his, Fritz Kahn, has to continue his studies and lectures in the US. He did not say that he's a Jew and escaping the Nazis. He described it to the US embassy that this person has to give lectures in the US. So maybe he was a preferred, he was preferred in getting a US visa together with his wife. And then in 1941, he arrived in New York.
I think we have a question from Martin Schulman, who is actually our district membership chair. Martin, you can just post the question live. We're not that formal today.
Martin, I see the Rube Goldberg. Yeah, of course I know. Actually, I didn't know Rube Goldberg before we worked on this project, but some people directed our attention to Rube Goldberg and his crazy machines. And there's actually a very interesting, how do you say, telemedicine approach by Rube Goldberg as well. I don't have it in my slides, but it's interesting that you raised that question. They didn't know each other as far as we know, but in the first book Kahn published in New York on first aid, he collaborated with an illustrator who has a similar style with Rube Goldberg, kind of a cartoonic or early advertising cartoon style. So there is a stylistic relation, but they never met each other as far as we know.
They might have been in New York at the same time. Goldberg studied engineering in California, but died in New York.
Ah, very interesting. Thank you for that information.
Yeah, he was published on a daily basis in the New York Journal American newspaper, and I don't know what happened to him after that paper went out of business, which I think was 1964. It was a Hearst newspaper, and so the Hearst publications carried Rube Goldberg, his cartoons, his illustrations, and all of their publications.
Yeah, my next.
Sorry.
Yeah, Wilfried, sorry.
Was this book ever for sale in Canada? I'm near Toronto, in Trenton, Ontario.
You mean our book?
Yeah.
Yeah, our book is available worldwide because Taschen has a worldwide approach. They include 3 languages in each book, so that it's and they have a high number of copies. So in the European, I think there's one issue containing English, French, and German. So you could improve actually your French and German when you own this book. And then there's a copy including English, Spanish, and Portuguese. It should be available, but I was told that it's sold out right now, and that if you are interested, you might have to wait some more weeks or months.
And who was selling the book?
Taschen. Taschen is the publishing house for coffee table books, well known for large photo books.
I imagine, Thilo, that you can buy it on Amazon. That's likely where we can find it, right?
Is it still available on Amazon?
I would have to check, but
yeah,
you know. So you know, Thilo, the question came from past Rotary International President Wilfred Wilkinson, who has attended just about every meeting during COVID of the Rotary Club.
Oh wow! So, great to meet you. An honor. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Very interesting meeting.
Thank you.
Thilo, one can only sit here and speculate as to the loss to civilization had the Nazi movement never flourished in Germany. All of the incredible intellects that were either lost or that had to flee. Imagine what would have been the future had they been able to stay and prosper and contribute to civilization.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I apologize. I have no words for that.
I don't think anyone does.
Yeah.
It's beyond, it's beyond comprehension.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, the German was good. Did they speak any Yiddish as well, or just German?
You mean the KAHNs?
Yes.
The couple. It's interesting. When I visited them at first time in Brooklyn, they spoke 3 languages. English as an all-day language, German when they couldn't find any English word because the German vocabulary is much bigger, and Hebrew when they were very nice to each other. Uh-huh. So they used 3 languages, which for me was really funny how they could. You saw in the video they were changing from English to German and back to yes. English. Sure. So it was always a mixture, and for me that was fascinating. And I also found it fascinating because they escaped Germany in the 1940s. That they still speak the old German of the 1940s. The German has, of course, not developed. So they were using very old terms like Geschmeide for jewelry, which we don't use anymore, or I will chauffeur you to the railway station, which we would not say. So for me, it was very interesting from the language point of view. It was fascinating to me. They spoke actually 3 languages. Unfortunately,
yeah, just
hardcover 154. This is really we never sold that for that big price.
That's okay, the hardcover, yes.
Capitalismus, yeah.
Ironically, Thilo, if you can see, there is only 1 left, so it is now a collector's item.
Okay. Yeah.
So what is this, Amazon?
This is Amazon, yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, but you should not spend more than that much of a price. I might tell Andreas as soon as they reprinted the copies, and then you don't have to become poor just because of Fritz KAHN. For me, it's really I'm very happy that I had the opportunity to introduce you to this forgotten man.
And thank you for this. Thilo, it would seem to me this would be a really great teaching tool in the schools to teach younger children biology, or even high school students biology. And I'm wondering, have you been approached, or has your organization considered approaching school systems?
After we published our book, many teachers asked us, can we use the images for school teaching? And we said, of course, yeah, sure, go ahead. There's no royalty protection or so. And some of the Bauhaus professors, when they came over to the United States, they used Fritz KAHN images for teaching in front of students. And as I told you, the big poster was used for school teaching as well. The poster Man as Industrial Palace. We found many big posters which are like 1928, 1929, specifically produced for school teaching. So you're absolutely right. It makes complex circumstances somehow understandable, comprehensible.
Yeah, it would seem to me the younger generation today is more visually oriented towards learning than your generation or my generation. And it would seem to me this would be a natural for teachers to use.
Maybe yes, but I think also if I go back like 60, 70 years, I think it still counts that an image is worth 1,000 words.
Of course.
So I think if really a thing is very complicated and you find an interesting translation for it, for example, compare it with a car because people are so enthusiastic about cars, then I somehow I catch you. I catch your attention. I think this is back then or even now it works in the same way. I would say as a designer.
Yeah, I even found it very interesting how Fritz KAHN developed a special section, a mechanism for morality, for when you were talking about sexual impulses, for something where the impression has to get past that before it can move on to the mechanism of the body.
Yeah, I didn't know if I could show this explicit content, but since it was so old, I thought you're an open community. I can show this visual to you.
If it's a coffee table book, I don't think you can have it in paperback. It has to be glossy. It has to be attractive. So I think the price is right.
Yeah, the original price of the big book was about like $50 US, and then the small book is like $20, which was nice because also students internationally could afford to buy the book, which was great for us because we received a lot of emails with interesting, enlightening information. But Taschen decided to publish the next issue in a large format. So Malika, you are right. I think also that these very detailed illustrations, for example, of the human body, it needs to become somehow visible, and it should not be too tiny so that you can't see the details.
And the colors, the details, has to be good, high quality book. Yeah. I would really have it.
So I can assure the quality because I was working on the book as a designer, and it was very important to us. If we don't earn a lot of money with writing a book, at least it should be a good book. It should be a premium produced book. So this I can assure.
Thank you. It's really very good to have been, to put all this together. And he is definitely a visionary. This telemedicine concept is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and for me, it was wonderful to present this to a New York Rotary Club because he lived in New York. And also my story ends in Brooklyn. So for me, is just a blessing that I was able to present it to you, and that you were open to my how do you say, proposal. Thank you very much. I'm happy to talk about this topic whenever you want me.
Well, thank you. Can you tell us anything about your Rotary Club?
Yes, we are 82 people, a mixture of many men and few women. There are 4 Rotary clubs in Wiesbaden. We are like the culture club because we have the director of the museum and of the art association in Wiesbaden. We have a sopranist. She's a member. Andreas told me that you also have a sopranist. Every Rotary club should have a sopranist as a member. It's a vivid bunch of people, and I also curate the weekly program, and I will be president in July. And we just signed a document. We have a partner club in Solothurn in Switzerland, and we just signed a document that we will partner with the Rotary Club of Jerusalem starting with this July, which is very exciting because this is the only English-speaking club in Israel. There are 60 clubs in Israel, and there's one English-speaking club, and we will become partner club of Jerusalem because we've had a very good personal connection. So I'm somehow excited, but on the other hand, you are experienced. On the other hand, I don't know. As a president in COVID-19 times, it's difficult because usually we meet every Thursday, like you, at lunchtime. And of course, the talks, the lectures are always fascinating and interesting. But for the relationship, I think it's important to eat together, for example, or just have some like casual, informal talk. So I don't know, because in Germany we are quite slow with vaccination. We invented the BioNTech Pfizer vaccination, but we gave it away. And now we don't, I'm not vaccinated. I might have to wait for 3 more months. So I'm a little bit envious looking over the Atlantic Ocean and see how you organize it. So yeah, we might have to wait, but I don't know how my Rotary year will be. But it seems to me when I attend a meeting like this, it works, and COVID opens new windows. To have Zoom meetings gives the chance to have speakers from all over the world, actually, and I think this is a chance in times of a crisis.
Well, we've been very fortunate because we have some very unique and individual members in our club who have really picked up the ball and run with it. We're very lucky to have Andreas because, you know, it can become a full-time position, as you're about to find out. He's been more than helpful in coordinating this and setting things up for us. But you're right. I mean, we always have a monthly breakfast at the UN, which we have not been able to have now for well over a year. So we do a Zoom, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
You know, when you have 40, 50 people sitting and having a breakfast with an ambassador, you as you said, breaking bread together brings people together. It's a very personal, intimate thing, and we've not been able to do that this year, as you yourself have said. We also have events in the evening. We've not been able to do that. And,
Yeah.
you know, the luncheons that we had at the Union League Club, we're not able to do. So all of these things you miss. But then you're right. We have been able to. I mean, Wilfred has been at every one of our meetings. We're honored to have him. This would not have happened if we did not have Zoom. You know, we have people who are from the club in London, the club in Dublin, who come regularly. They are at our meetings. So we're able to. We've done events with people in Hong Kong and in Taipei and Taiwan, and it's been great. You know, to have an international concert based in Taiwan and New York as a fundraiser for first responders here in New York City, and then to be able to go to the people who are the first responders in the hospitals and present them with supplies and equipment that they need. And this was really very early on in the pandemic, when really no one knew what to expect.
Wonderful.
So these are the kinds of things as Rotarians we're able to do. And in some respects, we were able to do it because of Zoom. But then on the other hand, you're right. Yeah, it's a give and a take. And hopefully, maybe by the fall, at least here, as you said, we've got well over 100 million people who have been fully vaccinated. And I understand Germany is going through some serious issues. Surprising. It's not Deutsche Ordnung. It's not what we have come to expect, but
it's embarrassing.
But it's we have similar issues here with especially amongst young people who, well, I'm not going to take it, and now we're facing spikes here in New York and New Jersey and places like Michigan, where we're going back to the levels we saw last August, but the people who are coming down with the virus are now young people who thought they were immune from it. And now they find out as a teenager, you're not immune from it. So
things are changing. Yeah, right.
Things are changing, as Fritz KAHN, it's a machine and don't take it for granted.
Yeah, but your comments make me think I might also need an Andreas somehow here over in my club. Maybe I have to approach Andreas if he can share his job with me.
We can discuss a licensing agreement. Typical New Yorker, correct? Yes. Andreas, do we have any other questions?
No, I see none in the room. Maybe we should just speak briefly about our program next week. And since Thilo mentioned the partnership with other clubs, maybe we can give consideration to the Rotary Club of Wiesbaden to become possibly reviewed by the board as a partner club as well, since he has
absolutely
New York, right? So
absolutely, yes.
But
Thilo, send us a simple inquiry. We will be having our board meeting the beginning of May, and sure, we'll vote on it. Why not? Sounds great to me.
That's a great offer. Who will be the president next year? You are also having a new president in July, as we have?
Yeah, we'll have an election in May. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I will be in contact with Andreas, and this sounds like a wonderful idea.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. We also are. We have connections with the Rotary Club in Munich, because they have they actually, as the Rotary Club in Munich and the Rotary Club in Berlin, they function in English only, which is interesting.
President Gerard, I just wanted to share briefly.
Please do, yes, thank you.
The topic for next Wednesday evening, and Thilo, feel welcome to join us as well. I will add you to this, but we have two high-level speakers who will talk about impacts of ESG on business and consumer behavior outlook. So that will happen next Wednesday at 7 p.m. So you're welcome to all join in. All right. That's about it.
Thilo, we have a board member actually, she's originally from Mongolia, and she got us connected very early on last year with the Global Shapers, which is an organization, the World Economic Forum. And so every month we have had, at the end of the month, we have had panel discussions dealing with economic employment issues. It's called youth empowerment, but actually it's for everyone. Anyone who's young in spirit, young in thought, young-minded is yes, of course. And so please, if you have time, join in with us. And Andreas is very good about it. All of our meetings we have on YouTube. So so if we have a meeting, let's say at 7 o'clock in the evening, it's early morning in Europe, or maybe even later in Asia. So people are able to access the recordings of the meetings on YouTube, which is a great help for everyone. So thank you for that, Andreas. And Thilo, Vielen Dank für alles. That was,
Pleasure.
you did a great job. And I think I speak for everyone to say it was a fascinating meeting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pleasure, Malika.